Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Adam Walker, and I'm here to introduce a course that I'll be teaching on Patreon in the spring of 2025, and I will also be releasing some of the lectures from that course on the YouTube here. The course is called The Bible in English Poetry. Let me tell you a little bit about the goals of this course. This is beginner friendly, by the way, so it invites readers who have never read the Bible, as well as those who are acquainted with it. And the focus is really going to be upon the literary influence of the Bible. But as the title suggests, there are two goals. And the first is to provide an introduction to the Christian scriptures as compiled in the Old and New Testaments of the King James Bible, also sometimes called the Authorized Version of 1611. We're going with the King James, not because it's the best translation. There are better English translations, but we're going with the KJV because this is the Bible that really influenced literature. This is the Bible that for the following 3 centuries after its publication was on every shelf of pretty much every major poet and in every major household. For the sake of brevity, we will not be considering the Apocrypha, which was published in the KJV in 1611. Instead, we're just going to focus on the kind of scriptural canonical works of the English Protestant tradition, which is just simply the Old and New Testaments. And the lectures, the readings, the discussions will all aim at introducing the Bible to readers of literature in a way that introduces it to people who really have very little experience with it as well. The second goal is to consider how English and American poetry engages with the Bible, not only through allusions. And we can often think of, okay, well, poetry is indebted to the Bible because, there's this allusion to Deborah or Mary's song. But there's more than just allusions that's important in English literature in relation to the Bible. We're not going to just be looking at what these allusions mean. We're also going to be looking at borrowed imagery and how poets, religious and non-religious, have reimagined and creatively appropriated modes of the Bible through its discourse, through its imagery, of course, as well as its cadence and rhythm, along with its methods of social critique, narrative art, and philosophical and theological perspectives. All of that's going to be there. In this respect, there is no such thing as a literary sanctity. Anything that falls within the bounds of human life and experience and its representation in literature will be fair game. However, one thing to keep in mind is that this is a literature course. So it's not a theology or religion course. It's a literature course. Theology, history, religion will all be considered often, especially in the context of the poets we're studying, but the focus is on the Bible as literature and as a source of literary inspiration. Matthew Arnold wrote that to understand that the language of the Bible is fluid, passing, and literary, not rigid, fixed, and scientific, is the first step towards a right understanding of the Bible. I think this is at least true for a right understanding of the Bible as literature. And this statement, I think, is helpful to keep in remembrance, as this course will invite us to consider how the Bible can be all 6 of these things: fluid, rigid, passing, fixed, literary, and scientific. All kinds of readers are encouraged to watch along in the videos or join the course on Patreon. The more discussion we have, the more religious and non-religious diversity we have in the discussions, I think the more those discussions are going to be enriched. So many times people of different traditions or outside of the Christian and Judeo-Christian perspective will often see things that those of us within it don't see. The diversity here is really encouraged. Readers who are deeply committed as religious people and are committed to a certain hermeneutic, a way of interpreting Scripture, will actually need to be flexible in this course. They should be willing to recognize that the Bible has been the source of many kinds of literary creativity, many kinds of philosophies, practices, and theologies. As the enjoyment of fiction depends upon what Samuel Taylor Coleridge called the willing suspension of disbelief, this course, or at least our critical readings of the Bible, will depend upon your willing suspension of belief and disbelief alike. And so you're going to have to step into this world to understand how the poets, many of whom were believers and who did approach the Bible reverently, saw it as a source of inspiration. And we have to imagine what it's like to believe in it. And we're also going to have to imagine different possibilities of believing what is said in this text. Right, I am a literary person. I did spend some time in seminary studying hermeneutics and also some philosophy, a little bit of church history. But my focus will be on literature. So this is a literature course. Some of the poets we're going to be reading in this round, and I might offer this course several times in the next few years and just do a different set of poems each time because there's just so much you can do. Here are some of the poems, or rather the poets, whom we'll be discussing in this course in this particular cycle. Dylan Thomas, Christina Rossetti, W.H. Auden, Siegfried Sassoon, Emily Dickinson, Wilfred Owen, John Henry Newman, George Herbert, John Donne, John Milton, William Wordsworth, Christopher Smart, Marianne Moore, Lord Byron, Walt Whitman, Allen Ginsberg, John Keats, Alfred Lord Tennyson, William Butler Yeats, T.S. Eliot, Edith Sitwell, among a couple others. So these are the big names here. Something to mention, something I should mention, is that for the readings each week, I've selected about 30 minutes worth of reading from the King James Bible itself. And we're going to go in order from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And we're not going to be reading everything. Of course, if you have the time, you could read through the entire Bible in a semester along with me in this course. But really, I've selected just about 30 minutes to 40 minutes of reading from the King James Version of the Bible each week. So it's manageable. You can do it on your lunch break or whenever you do your reading. The other thing that's going to be, so there are 3 components each week of the readings. The first is the King James. The second is a handful of poems that I have listed on the syllabus. And then the third is this optional reading. Reverend Noah Bailey, who is a minister here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, he's also a PhD candidate at Queen's University, Belfast, has written a summary of the entire Bible with footnotes to the references. And Reverend Bailey and I have collaborated on an article on poetry and homiletics recently. And he's very familiar with the Bible, so he's put together this summary so that you can have this bird's eye view of the entire story, and it's told from a very historically Christian, pretty much Western narrative of the Bible, meaning that the Christian traditions that have existed in England since the medieval period, whether it's early Christianity, Roman Catholicism, or Protestantism, would all pretty much agree with what this summary says. And that packet is part of a book we're working on, introducing the Bible as literature and with literature. One component of the book has the summary of the Bible, the other has introductions to the poetry. So, for those of you who want to be able to be confident in navigating the Bible, in understanding what its major genres are, how the books are divided, this packet is going to be indispensable to you. And Reverend Bailey is also going to be giving one of the lectures for this course. This document will be provided on Patreon. Now let me tell you about some of the lectures that I'll be delivering live. The first one, a lecture is titled The Bible and You, Myth as Personal History. Week 2, lecture Christian Typology in English Poetry. And this is a really important concept that often gets overlooked. So we're going to be considering the importance of typology, which is a type of symbol, you might say. Lecture 3, Biblical Symbols in the Devotional Mode. So if you're looking at the devotional mode in English poetry, the Hebrew roots of romantic verse, the sacred history in English poetry. Sacred history would be the historical books of the Old Testament dealing with the kings and the kingdoms. We have 2 weeks on the historical books, sacred history, and the sacred present will be the next lecture I give. After that, we'll be into the prophets, major and minor prophets. We'll have some readings from Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Lamentations. And this lecture is going to be called Poetry in the Prophetic Mode. Then we'll have spring break, and then week 8. We'll have psalmody and hymnody in the English tradition. So my lectures, you can see it's really focused on the literature and the engagement with the Bible and literature. So you really get both halves. First with Reverend Bailey's packet, and the other half with my lectures here. They really go hand in hand. The next lecture is going to be Poetry and the Parable. We're going to be focusing on the Gospels, and I have selections from each of the 4 Gospels, mostly parabolic. Next, Epistles and Experience. We'll be reading mostly the Pauline epistles here, and John Donne's sonnets. So this lecture will be on Donne's engagement with the Pauline epistles in his holy sonnets. In the last week, of course, the apocalyptic imagination. And I think we've got Yeats, we've got Blake. It's going to be a lot, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So the main thing is, what are you going to get out of this? The Bible is long. Our time is short. So, as I said, we won't be reading every single book of the Bible, but by the end of the course, if you stick with me, you will know what each book of the Bible contains. You will have a basic concept of the narrative structure of the Bible, the whole arc from Genesis to Revelation, and how it all fits together. You'll be more confident in navigating its books and chapters, and you'll also be confident in identifying the major genres. And you'll also, I hope, be more sensitive to the literary reverberations of the King James Bible in traditions of English language poetry. So if you're new to the Bible, or if you're familiar with it already and you want to learn a little bit about its influence on literature, this is really the course for you. So I hope you'll join either on Patreon, or I hope you'll tag along at least for the lectures on YouTube, which are sponsored by the patrons on Patreon. You can find the syllabus to this course in the description below. You can also find the link to Patreon if you want to join, and along with some other information there that I think might be helpful. Thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all next spring.